So what is addiction? It's a gradual rewiring of the brain. It affects both the biology and the cognition, both the hardware and the software. So I'm going to try to explain that real quickly to you. So right here, I've got some Fun Dip candy. You've seen this before. You probably ate this at some point. You know how this works. This thing is the stick, and we're going to stick it in the sugar. But today, we're going to pretend that this is actually a neuron in your brain. And what we need to understand is what we call neuroplasticity. So this neuron right here, we're going to call it a dopamine neuron. It's a brain neuron. It basically works like this. You create some sticky spots on this, you stick it in there, and we're going to pretend that that's neurotransmitter chemicals attaching to this neuron, which is going to make this neuron fire. And when that neuron fires, that's when you have that feeling, and that feeling is feeling pretty good because this is a reward neuron. It's called a dopamine neuron. It's in the center of your brain. That's normal. That's the way it should work. But what happens when people take drugs? This is what happens. You overload, you flood the system with these outside chemicals that get through what we call the blood-brain barrier, and they get into there and they affect that neuron by loading it up with all of these neurotransmitters that affect it, like opioids do. This is not good. This is not healthy. What happens now, of course, is that you feel high. You don't feel just good. You feel extremely good, better than you've ever felt before, quite possibly. And so now you've got this effect. But the brain is a biological system, and biological systems adapt. That's what they're supposed to do. So what's it going to do? What the biological system could do, it does a lot of different chemical changes, is it dries itself out. It dries out. So now, if you try to flood it with chemicals again, it doesn't happen. That way you don't have that overabundance of feelings that the system knows that I'm not supposed to be feeling that loaded up chemical feeling all the time. But here's another thing that happens is that because it's dried out, when you go through a normal day, you don't get that neuron to fire in the same way. Things just don't feel as good to you. They feel kind of dull and sad and depressing, and you want to feel good again. So what are you going to do? You're going to take more drugs. Now what's happening is you're also building up tolerance. The neuron has started to dry itself out. You've got to take more chemical to try to get that neuron to fire the same amount as it did before. It builds up more tolerance. We call that, by the way, neuroplasticity. As the brain system adapts to the things happening to it, it's kind of plastic, and we call that neuroplasticity. Unfortunately, this happens a lot when you're in your teen years. It happens tremendously from 0 to 4, and again as a teenager. So teenagers have neuroplasticity more than us old people do, and what's happening then is that their system is changing rapidly, which is making them become addicted. They get addicted fast because the brain adapts to all of those outside chemicals.